Hey everybody, how's it going? It's Spalding Space here, back with another Star Wars Legends book review. Now this time we're going to be reviewing Annihilation by Drew Caperson. Now this is the 7th event in the Legends timeline, and the 4th and final book in the Old Republic anthology, and it's personally my favorite in the anthology. But in case you didn't get the little skit we put at the beginning of the video, I highly recommend that you watch our Fatal Alliance review. Unfortunately, that book was not very good, but lucky for us, Annihilation was. And it was a great palate cleanser after reading that very bad book. But before I get into the review, I just want to let you know that there aren't going to be any spoilers for the first, half or so of the book, or the review. I'll make it very clear when I go into the spoiler section. So if you haven't read the book, I recommend that you just watch this first half or so and get some insight, and then if you have read it, then still watch it. It's good for the YouTube algorithm. And I'll provide some analysis and insight when I get to the spoilery parts. Okay, let's first contextualize where this novel takes place before we get into the characters and the plot and whatsoever. So this was actually the last Old Republic book to come out in the whole anthology, and it was the only book in that grouping that came out after the Star Wars The Old Republic video game came out. So the first three were sort of used to hype up the game, and this book actually came out after the game released. And you can definitely, and that really, really helps the book, you can definitely see a lot more cohesion within the game and the book. Now, if you're not a fan of the video game, then it really shouldn't concern you or anything. But if you do like the game, I recommend that you at least finish the Jedi Knight class story before reading this book. There are some spoilers to the video game. If you don't play the video game, still read it. It's a fantastic book. So just, mild spoiler warning. Okay, so that's pretty much all I have to contextualize. Something relatively interesting is that this is actually Drew Caperson's last Star Wars book. So if you read the Darth Bane books, he wrote those, which are fantastic. I have reviews on those. He also wrote Revan, which I also have a review on. Okay, let's get into the characters. So first we have Theron. Now, if you're a fan of the channel, you'll know that I recently got a haircut, and I kind of look like Theron, so I thought it was a good time to get a haircut because, I see some resemblance. But Theron is a very, very interesting character, and he's also very unique. He is the son of Jedi Grandmaster Satele Shan, and it's really interesting to see the child of a Jedi, especially, Theron's not even Force sensitive, and him having to come to grips with that. And, he's not upset about that, but obviously his mother had to give him away because, no Jedi attachment. So it was very interesting to see that. Also, Theron is a super cool secret agent, and I'm a sucker for those kind of James Bond stories and movies, so I really liked all the undercover work and, stealthy things that he would do. So if you like that sort of thing, you'll love this book and you'll love Theron. Okay, next we have Nostoral. Now, Nostoral is sort of Theron's sidekick throughout the novel, and this is going to sound mean, but it's not. He's not a very unique character, and that's not, necessarily a bad thing. He's just, when you read a lot of Star Wars novels, people are always doing heroic things or whatever. He has cool moments, but he's just kind of along for the ride. He plays some good parts, and it's very integral, but or integral. He's just, he doesn't have a very decisive, personality or anything. It wasn't very memorable. Next we have Tethys. Now Tethys is sort of the comedic relief of the novel. She is very funny when she has sort of these one-liners. But there were elements of her character, and I'll get into this in the plot in the spoiler section, that they just weren't fully developed. Her motivations weren't always clear. Her relationship with Theron was just not very clear. I don't know why that couldn't have been explained a little more. It just made me a little confused. But other than that, Tethys was great. But now we're getting into the great characters. So Satele Shan, fantastic. The relationship that she has with Theron is super, super interesting and very well done. There are a lot of moral dilemmas presented within the book that you, as a reader, sort of have to take a side on because there isn't one clear answer. And you can definitely see Satele and Jace's and Theron's viewpoints on all of these different issues. And I'll get to that in the plot. So Satele, I really, really enjoyed her character. Finally, we have Jace Malcolm, who's the Supreme Commander of the Republic and Theron's father. Now, that's not much of a spoiler. It's given away very early on. But man, his scenes with Theron and Satele are so, so good. I was just reading like, oh man, this book is really about the family aspect rather than the whole grand adventure. But I'll get more into that on plot. But Star Wars is about family or dysfunctional family, and the moments that Theron had with Jace were kind of like watching an episode of Maury.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Maury Show. Today we have a very special guest with us, Jace Malcolm, the Supreme Commander of the Republic. Now, Jace claims that he had a very intimate relationship with Jedi Grandmaster SWTOR I. Now, during this intimate time on Alderaan, he claims that they fathered a child together, named Theron Shan. In the studio with us today, we have Theron Shan to determine whether he is, in fact, the son of Jace Malcolm. And now, the results are in. In the case of 25-year-old Theron Shan, Jace, you are the father.
I did it for you, Theron, for the Republic!
Okay, so let's hop straight into the plot of this book. Now, this book starts off so well. It just showcases pretty much all of its strengths within the first 3 or 4 chapters. So, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a sucker for good spy movies and James Bond sort of things, and that is a huge part of the beginning of this novel. It's basically Theron sort of climbing up walls, listening to people, doing secret spy agent things. So I really enjoyed that. So that was one of my favorite parts of the novel just in general. A huge strength of this book is the character development and the family dynamics, but that comes on, more later in the story. It doesn't really happen near the beginning. But what I think really, really makes, just pushes this book to a higher tier of novels, in my opinion, is the humor. This book is unapologetically funny. And that I'll mention a lot of instances later, but it is just really, really funny. It's probably the funniest Legends book that I have read. And, it's not, the book isn't, it doesn't take itself too seriously. And that's not a bad thing. It's not just mindless, nonsense like Fatal Alliance or like a Transformers movie that's just, fighting for the hell of it. It just, it acknowledges the absurdity of some of the things that happen in Star Wars. For instance, while Theron's walking through Nar Shaddaa, he notices someone's following him, so he decides to beat him up. But little does he know that the person that was following him is another SIS agent.
Who are you? Who do you work for?
Theron!
How do you know my name?
You're my best friend! You're the best man at my wedding!
Command, this is Theron. No, I haven't seen Jeff.
Okay, so let's jump straight into the plot of this novel. So basically the main antagonist of the whole book is someone named Darth Carad. Now, she is the former apprentice of Darth Malgus, who is the antagonist in Deceived. You don't really need to read that book. It's just some interesting lore. And she commands this giant ship called the Ascendant Spear. And all of that information is super, super cool because she plugs herself into the ship using her cybernetics and commands it with the Force. So all of that is really, really cool. But I guess, and this is going to lead me into a larger point, the plot is very simple. There's not a lot to talk about. Sorry to disappoint you. In a lot of my other reviews, I go super in-depth with the plot, things I like and didn't like, and I'll still be doing that. It's just, I won't be doing it at the same degree because it's fairly simple. And there's nothing wrong with having a simple plot. If it's too convoluted, then why even read it? But in this case, it's, what really makes this book good is not the plot. It is the comedy, the humor, and also the relationship that Theron has with his parents. But I guess the most bare bones plot explanation I could give without spoiling anything is that it's just like Star Wars: A New Hope, right? There is a whole gang of friends, there is an old mentor, and there is a, massive super weapon that they have to destroy. And that's pretty much it. But the book, and don't let that dissuade you, because there is a plot. It's not just mindless. But what really lifts up this book and makes it a page-turner are all the great moments that are provided through Theron's family. And it really pays a nice homage to Star Wars and to what Star Wars is really about. I recently watched an interview with George Lucas, and he was saying Star Wars isn't about lightsabers or TIE fighters or all that stuff. It's about family. and it really, this book really nails that. So, you know, I hesitate to say it's a flawless book because there are flaws within it, but it's, you know, it succeeds at what it does, and it is there to entertain you. And this book does a very, very good job at being entertaining. So just because it doesn't have a super, super in-depth, you know, thought-provoking plot, you know, shouldn't dissuade you from reading it at all. I really enjoyed it, and I know you will too, especially if you are a fan of the Old Republic MMO. Okay, that's pretty much all I have to say about the plot. If I had to rank this book out of 10, I'd give it a solid 8.5. Just because, you know, there are so many other books that accomplish what this book does and more. Next, I'm going to be reviewing Darth Plagueis, and that's one such book. It doesn't have the humor aspect, but it is just such an immense novel with so many different facets. I mean, I could go on forever, which I will in the next review, so that might take me a while to get to. But trust me, I will be working very hard on it. Okay, so that's pretty much all I have to say about the non-spoiler section. I will be moving on to spoilers now. Okay, so I guess the first thing that really sticks out to me when I think of spoilers is the moral dilemma that Theron and Jace go through. And this is one of the things I didn't really like. I mean, I did like it at first, and then I didn't. So let me explain for you, you know, to those who haven't seen it or just want to hear more about it, how we get here. So Theron and Nostorel pick up something called the Black Cipher, which lets them tap into all of the Empire's communications so they can know where the Ascendant Spear is so they can ultimately destroy it. Okay, makes sense. And by having this Black Cipher, they can listen in to all of the Empire's communications regardless. And they find out that a world is going to be destroyed. Now, Theron's father, Jace, who's like the supreme commander of the war and everything, let a previous planet be completely bombarded in fear that the Empire would know that they were listening to their transmissions and render their Black Cipher ineffective. So it presents an interesting moral quandary. And I think Jay sums it up pretty well when he says, well, we can let thousands of people die, but save trillions of lives by destroying the Ascendant Spear. And by him saying that, I got it, right? I mean, you could save lives on this planet or destroy the Ascendant Spear. That made sense to me, although, you know, that is a terrible thing to live with. But I think Capriccian made the mistake of making Theron just so against that notion, and he is the protagonist, so ultimately, you know, our, you know, values should kind of align with him. But Theron doesn't even consider it. He just jumps straight to the train of no way, we need to go save Duros, is the planet. One of the other ones was already destroyed, and he's just abhorred by what his father, you know, did by letting basically an entire planet just take the brunt of an Imperial attack. I just felt as though Capriccian wasted a moment to actually have something thought-provoking by just completely shutting that idea down and then having Jace learn from it. Like, oh, I guess I shouldn't have done that. Well, you know, Theron and Nostorel eventually save the day, but it, you know, that's really improbable. Just the idea itself of, you know, sacrificing thousands to save trillions, you know, not saying that it's right, but it should have been entertained more than it was. Okay, let's get on to things that I really liked in the spoiler section. Now, this is probably my favorite part of the entire novel. Oh my gosh, it's fantastic. There's nothing like it in Star Wars. So basically, Theron and Nostorel are running around the Ascendant Spear half naked with just their underwear on, and it is hilarious. Okay, so I guess the remaining things that I have left to talk about in terms of spoilers are some sort of things I didn't really like about Tethys' character. I felt the same way as I did when reviewing Deceived, is that I felt that the relationship between Theron and Tethys was not clear. Just like in Deceived, it wasn't clear between Zerid and Aaron. You're not sure as to whether the relationship is romantic or if it's sort of a sibling thing, and with Theron and Tethys, it turns out to just be a sibling thing, which is fine. You know, I don't crave romance. But the entire novel, you know, there's not a he's so invested in her, and it is explained why, but it never explains that it's purely platonic. Until the very last sentence. So I just wish that Capuchin could have just, made it very clear that that wasn't the case. It just seemed distracting to me because it was just in my mind, and then it was dismissed so quickly. So that was just one thing that I wished had been a little more clear. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And I think this is going to be one of my shorter videos. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But yeah, and I want to mention something. I'm going to start wrapping this up right now. I feel like maybe I've been talking a little too long, as I normally do, even though this hasn't been that long, hopefully. Is that in my Fatal Alliance review, the audio, I realized, is just so bad. I think we had a camera problem and also a mic problem, so all of that hopefully should be sorted out. I didn't realize that until after actually filming this review. This is my third time filming it. I filmed it twice with bad audio. So third time's a charm, I hope. And I really hope that you enjoyed this review. As I said, next time I'm going to be doing Plagueis, which might take me a little while to get out because it is just a beast of a book, but it is really good. So thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think. Maybe you enjoyed it, maybe you didn't. And yeah, have a good day.